All right. Hey, everyone. It is Jordy and Jay from Freelance Vets. We are super excited this morning to be chatting with Becky O'Mahony, a 22-year, just retired counterintelligence and civil officer from the U.S. Army. Becky got out a couple months ago, or did you say just recently?
Yeah, April 29th, just a
April
couple
20. Oh my God, a
ago.
couple weeks ago. So anyway, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with Jay and me this morning. We have lots of questions for you, and we're
Awesome.
eager to share your story with our audience of veterans and military spouses. So to start us off, do you mind telling us a little bit about your military career? I know you started at age 17.
Yeah, I was 17 when I joined. I was a junior in high school. One of my friends, she joined, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I could do that." Um, so it was a way to kind of pay for college and something fun to do, different, get me out of upstate New York, so I could go and start, you know, traveling and having adventures.
And what
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what you did, what you do in the military, because you have
Okay,
some
so
interesting stuff you did.
right. So I initially joined as civil affairs specialist, and then I broke that contract and went active duty because I just loved it so much. In the military, the Army specifically, and I went active duty as counterintelligence special agent, and I did that a majority of my career. I've actually never deployed as civil affairs. Everything I've done is counter intel, but a couple of years ago, I was promoted to first sergeant, and I was transferred out of counter intel into civil affairs. So I was back in that place. So I got to work with a lot of the young soldiers that were joining, a lot of the officers that were transitioning. And when I joined, it was special operations. So it was like real hua hua and badass. It's not anymore like under special ops, but it still has that feeling to it. And they still treat themselves that way. And they have active duty um, civil affairs now, which actually, I should say, I didn't go active duty as civil affairs because they didn't allow females active duty unless you were special forces. I mean, well, anyone unless you were special forces, and I was not equipped to be special forces. So I had to change jobs. I had to reclass. So I went to language school for Russian. 9/11 happened. I was stationed in Germany then, and within a couple of months, I was in Operation Northern Watch in Turkey, where we had the no-fly zones, and then Iraq started. So I rolled into northern Iraq, up in Mosul with the 101st, and came back real quickly. They put me in Afghanistan. At this point, I was like stop lost and stop moved, and I was very done with the military. I needed to stop. So I left active duty prematurely. I wish I'd stayed in active duty, but I met a lot of reservists, and I was like, oh, that's where it's at. You can deploy and you can go home, like at the end of the day, and not have to do the garrison version of the Army. Um, so I did that. I joined the reserves, and I taught down at Fort Huachuca, the Intel Schoolhouse. I taught um, some biometrics. I did a lot of the counterintelligence coordination courses. And then I did COIST. And that was the company intelligence support team. So that was fun. That was a mobile training team. So we traveled everywhere to all of the different infantry guys and the different combat arms kids. And if you ever talk to some of my friends that taught with me, they, at the end of the course, they would say things like, finish him, like Mortal Kombat, because I would occasionally, no, quite often make the infantry kids cry at the end of the course. And it was just because I realized that they expected me to be like a motherly figure. And then I wasn't, because, I was an E7 or whatever, an E8 in the military, and had to do a lot of things on my own. So there was that. And then My last deployment, I had my son, and about 5 months later, I had to go to Afghanistan. I was a single mom at the time. And yeah, so I did that. But most of my deployments, I was supporting task force, special forces, mostly third group and seventh group, because they were the ones going to those locations. And whatever unit. So this last one was the 173rd Airborne, out of Vincenza. And they're a special breed over there. They're a special breed. But then I came back and I did the first sergeant thing, and I was medically retired a couple weeks ago, and that took a long time. That was tough to get through administratively. Well, that's about
Well, thank
yeah.
you for sharing that. Jay, hit her.
Well, I've had the pleasure of knowing Becky for many, many years, and it's always been a pleasure to serve with her and call her a friend of mine. One of the things that I mentioned earlier that I noticed on our social media posts was since you just retired a week ago, your post said, buyer's remorse, retirement. Been doing this since I was 17. Now what am I supposed to do? So I thought that was key about what we should probably try to touch on in conversation today was, when you're transitioning out after being in for so many years and you're sitting there looking at it now, okay, well, my life has been this for 20, 22 years, running and gunning, so to speak. And now what? Okay, I'm still a mom, I'm still a wife, but now what do I do with my life? And I thought that was so key to what more and more people are suffering from as they have been in for 6, 8, 10, 12, 20 years. It adds up and adds up quickly where that becomes your whole identity. And what do you do when you get out, and how do you have to start over again? And I know that you're trying to make a few things work, and I wanted to highlight that. And maybe what you say and share will help others as they're transitioning out. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think you brought up a couple of very fair points, that it's not just people who are staying in the military for their whole career. We have, since you and I have met, I mean, I was 19 when we met. I was just a little baby.
You were
Um,
a kid, I know. I still call you a kid. It's all right.
I mean, I was so innocent then, but I think back to myself back then. Yeah, right. I was so innocent back then compared to like the knowledge that I have now and the experiences that I've had. And I think about even leaving active duty, and that was like in 2006, 2007. I moved back to the US. So it was only about 6 or 7 years, about 7 years that I was active duty. And a lot of people were getting out at that time. And I feel like since 9/11 has occurred, I was pre 9/11, but since that's occurred, we've had an extraordinary amount of people coming in for short stints in the military, regardless of whatever service they join. People are just doing their commitment and then they're getting out. It's very difficult. There's very few people that I have seen from start to finish retiring. And it's because it's so difficult, and you are experiencing so much in such a short period of time that it's exhausting, and people can't sustain that for 20 years, 20 plus years. And the ones who do, they're just another topic. But for the kids and people that are going in and getting maybe money for school and getting their 9/11 GI benefits, there's some really great programs that draw you in, but people don't think about the transition out. So I can tell you the differences from when I first transitioned out active duty to my transition out now is it varies on what you're going to experience. They have what used to be called ACAP, the Army Career Transition and stuff, and now they have Soldier for Life. SFL TAP and transition programs, and it's mandatory. You can do it up to 2 years out. So if someone's transitioning out, regardless of how long you're staying in, I really recommend that the people that are getting out, if they're active duty, that they take advantage of the SFL TAP or whatever it is in your service, because you can do it up to 2 years out. And this transition program is going to provide you with the resources and the tools and just a number of different things for job placement. It can get you back into school. In some situations, there's, what do they call it? They call it the, what is it? Oh, an apprenticeship or something like that, or on the job training. And you can leave your unit for a year, and if your commander allows you to, and go and work for that organization, so that way you can start getting that experience and maybe do your internship portion and then transition to a full-time job when you get out. And that's their goal. They make you have a resume and submit your resume if you don't already have it, because they don't want people to be unemployed when they get out of the military. And because that's a very big issue, and it's an issue for like spouses too, right? Like the people, whoever will PCS and move to a new location, and then they have to have a new, job and stuff like that. I personally find that there's more support for military spouses than there are for the actual soldiers that are transitioning out. But that's just the way it is. And maybe it helps them retain soldiers. I don't know what their approach is with that, but it is what it is. And I've been on both sides. I've been a military spouse. I've been a soldier. Now, I've always been a soldier and a military spouse, so it was like an odd situation. But anyway, when they're transitioning out, there are a lot of opportunities out there. So what I've personally done is I was being medically retired, and I don't want to have anything to do with trauma or the increased adrenaline that comes from being in the military. So I wanted to find something more calm, but I'm also a retired first sergeant. So I'm very much a leader and like to help people get where they want to be. Because I would tell people, like, I'm not at that point where I'm going to do the things anymore. I'm going to show you how to show other people how to do the things. I'm not even going to deal with the soldiers. I'm going to deal with the sergeants, and I make them do their job so that way they can be leaders. So I tried to build leaders. And what my goal is now in the civilian side that I'm retired is to kind of do the same thing. I chose health and life coaching because it was not a difficult certification to get, but it also comes in line with a lot of the experiences that you get in the military, as far as leadership and mentoring and helping people. And I feel like a lot of people get out of the military and they think that their only options are security of some sort, or they get stuck into some type of retail job or some minimum wage type of job, when there's other options that are out there, and they don't have to have a degree to get into these jobs. Yeah, my biggest recommendation for people would be, if they're getting out and they're going to start into something new and they really just don't know what they're doing, is to take advantage of the school option, or to go into some type of federal or state job, or maybe like a municipality or something like that. Because I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have health insurance already like kind of given to me with my job. And that's another benefit of the military that people don't kind of like think about, is you're given everything you need. I mean, it's a socialist society, but you can cut that part out if you need to. But the military is like the ideal socialism. It's everything that you need. And people, once they are removed from that, they don't know how to support themselves. And a lot of people join when they're young, they don't get those experiences. So, um, what what type of transition, did you guys have anything like specific about a transition that you
Well,
see that kind of focusing on?
what I'd like to ask you first is, as you know, there are a lot of veterans right now going through a really tough time. A lot of people have been laid off, they've been furloughed, they've had their incomes disappear. Um, what advice would you have for people to stay mentally strong through this time? What are some proactive things they can do so they don't feel like their world is falling apart around them? So when things clear up, they're in a position to, um, get back on track.
You know, I love that question. That's like my bread and butter. I love that. So I feel like there's two ways to answer that. There's an immediate response, like, okay, right now I'm going downhill and I am catching myself, or people are starting to, mention that I'm not like myself. Those self inventory, they should do a self inventory of themselves. Everyone should. I don't care who they are. Like, but at this time, they should for sure do a self inventory. So, how do you do that? You can go ahead and start prioritizing and thinking and just brainstorming about, what do you have? What do you have available? And this is my approach for people with the military, because I feel like they can relate to this and look at it and say, okay, I'm where I am right now. I I mean, it could be I'm homeless, or I'm stuck in my mom's basement, or I have 5 kids, a wife or a husband, and we just lost our jobs and we have only unemployment coming in. Um, or we have a friend who, Jay and I have a friend who, she's got 5 kids. One is has extreme like disabilities, and they all recently got COVID. Um, and I've been talking to her, and I want to go down and help her so bad, but instead it's like, hey, look at what you have. Okay, you've got 5 kids. You got a couple of teenagers, you got a couple of kids that can help you out. It's not just you. Or I have this food, and I have this electricity. I have my phone up until this time. So it's kind of like the idea of assess your situation, see your left and right limits, like is what we say in the military. What are my left and right limits? So over here, I have this, and this is the end of that. I don't have this. So I'm not even going to focus on, my investments right now or something like that. Maybe you have to stop your investments. So they have to really assess where they are. Now, everyone can reach out to Military One Source, and they can get a financial planner. They can also get um, counseling over the phone if they need to work through those issues. That's just a really great resource, Military One Source. Even if you're a veteran, they'll still be able to prompt you to other organizations that might be able to help you if you're out. But if someone's starting to feel like they're going downhill, I'll give you my example. This past Friday, I think it was, is when they announced in New York that they are going to cancel school for the rest of the year and have it be homeschooling. And I have a third grader and a kindergartner. So, and I have a husband who's a first responder who works in New York City and is just gone between 4 a.m. and like 5 or 6 p.m. So there's a lot of things that have to happen. And I just became very angry, very, very angry. And I don't want that anger to like go outward toward my kids or my husband or anything like that. So I like went inside my own head and I just was withdrawing from people. So if that's my way of doing it, if some people do get angry and they will have an outward expression of anger and they'll want to, punch something or run or whatever. That's cool. I'm indifferent about how the person reacts. Either way, they need to ground themselves. And one of the quickest way for someone to ground themselves is to take where they are, stop what they're doing. And you can do it around people. You could be on a bus or a subway or anything like that. You could be anywhere and other people aren't going to notice you doing this necessarily. So it's not like stop and do a meditation or, go run or go punch something or go scream into a pillow. No, 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 no. Exactly where you are, you need to ground yourself and bring yourself out of your head and back into reality. And the best way to do that is to simply look around you and say, what are 5 things that I can see? And you name those 5 things. Then you do 4 things that you can hear. 4 things that you can hear. All right, cool. You can do 3 things that you can touch. And you actually touch that item. Maybe it's just your feet on the ground or, the seat that you're sitting on or something like that. Don't go and find these things. Just stay where you are and bring yourself into the reality of where you physically are at that moment. And then you're going to do a couple of things that you can hear, and then you can do something you can smell. So basically it's the 5 senses. You can do them in whatever order you really like. It doesn't have to be 5 things you can see. It could be 5 things you can touch, 3 things you can see, 2 things you can hear. It could be anything really. But what that does is it recenters the person into their physical state and where they are. And by the end of that, you're also taking time. The theory behind this is that you're physically bringing yourself back, but you're also mentally bringing yourself back because this takes time and this takes focus. And if you can't sit and stare at a flower, so my therapist had me do this once. I had to sit and stare at a flower for as long as I can. Like, I can't focus like that. And that's a big problem with people in the military, is that we're so reactionary. We're so taught to quickly react to things that we have a higher, not ability, but I guess it's ingrained in us now to react. And if this helps someone, give them something to react to, that's what they have to do, is they have to start planning ahead and training themselves on how they're going to react in different situations. And that's really what habit change is. And that's neuro-linguistic programming. I could go into, cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, those are the things, the concepts, but that's the quickest way that I would recommend helping people focus during this time.
I like that. I like that strategy. That's a good one, because anyone could do that anywhere. Makes sense. Anything else for Becky J?
So Becky, real quick, you mentioned a friend of ours and how she may struggle. There's others that we know that are probably struggling in different ways. And, you mentioned the Military OneSource. If someone's not aware of what that is, how do they contact them?
Okay. So Military OneSource is a website. You can also call them. And the phone number is 1-800-OneSource, I want to say. But then you can Google it and just put Military OneSource, and it has everything there. It has a lot of resources that you don't even have to talk to someone. But it can go through they'll, if you are still in the military, like for reservists or National Guard or something like that, and maybe veterans. I'm not sure how it is with the veterans, to be honest, but you go onto that site and they will give you 12 free sessions for whatever issue you're having. So if you're having marital issues, they will give you 12 free or paid for sessions with a family therapist in person, or something like that. And then if maybe you're having some type of personal struggle, they'll give you another 12 for your own personal therapy, or something like that. Now, as far as financial counselors, they will link you up with, what's it called? Take Charge America. It's a nonprofit organization that is a like financial advisor, financial planners, and it's not a debt consolidation program or anything like that, but they will reach out to the creditors for you, and they come up with a program and a timeline of how to reduce your debt. I'm just kind of highlighting the big issues that end up being an issue for soldiers. They can help you with daycare and maybe some medical stuff. I'm not exactly sure all of the different areas, but I mean, it's pretty all inclusive. It's like a go-to one-stop shop for your whole life, all the aspects of it.
Well, that's a great resource for people that might see this video. And, if you are able to help one person, that's all that really matters at the end of the day. So, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope I was helpful. I know I talked a lot about, how to help people as opposed to, specifics about businesses and stuff like that. But
No, this was
yeah,
perfect what you did. And no, it's great. As Jay mentioned, it's inspiring for others to hear stories from people who are successfully navigating the process or just talking about their own struggles. So thank you so much for your time today.
And it can't
okay.
always be about business, Becky. You know that.
I know.
Without a strong base and strong foundation of family and support, business doesn't really mean much. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your time. Thank you today, hon.
Hey, wait, one quick question. Jordy, where are you located right now?
I'm in Massachusetts.
Amherst. Oh, you're in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So we'll all have to get together at some point after this is all like lifted. Absolutely. And stuff like that.
No doubt. All right. Thanks, guys.